Charles walked through the old corridors of Highgrove House, his private estate where he had spent countless peaceful hours over the decades. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the tall windows, creating patterns on the wooden floors that had witnessed so many moments of his life. Today felt different somehow, heavy with an unexplained tension that made his chest tight. He had returned earlier than expected from his trip to Scotland, wanting to surprise Camilla with his presence. The house felt unusually quiet, and the staff informed him that Camilla was somewhere in the East Wing, though they seemed uncertain about her exact location. Charles found this odd, as Camilla was always precise about her whereabouts and schedule. Moving through the familiar hallways, Charles noticed something he had never seen before. At the end of the east corridor, near the room they rarely used for storage, there was a faint line of light coming from underneath what he had always assumed was a solid wall. His heart began to race as he approached the area, running his fingers along the wall until he found a hidden panel that gave way under pressure. Behind the panel was a narrow staircase leading downward, lit by soft electric lights that someone had obviously installed recently. The air smelled of lavender and old wood, mixed with something else he couldn't identify. Charles felt his hands trembling as he descended the stairs, each step echoing softly in the confined space. The staircase led to a small but beautifully decorated underground room that Charles had never known existed in his own home. The walls were painted in soft cream colors, decorated with photographs and personal items that made his stomach drop. There were comfortable chairs, a small writing desk, and shelves filled with books and journals. It was clearly a space someone had been using regularly, a private retreat hidden from the world above. But it was not the room itself that made Charles freeze in the doorway. It was Camilla, sitting in one of the chairs with her back to him, speaking quietly into a phone. Her voice carried a tone he had never heard before, soft and intimate in a way that made his blood run cold. "I know this is difficult for both of us," Camilla was saying, unaware of Charles standing behind her. "But we have to be patient a little longer. Charles suspects nothing. And once everything is in place, we can finally be together the way we have always dreamed." Charles felt the world spinning around him as he gripped the doorframe for support. The woman he had married, the woman he had chosen to spend his life with after Diana, was speaking to someone else with the same tenderness she had once reserved only for him. Camilla continued her conversation, and each word felt like a knife in Charles's heart. "The lawyers say the paperwork will be ready soon. Charles has signed everything I have put in front of him over the past months without really reading it. He trusts me completely, which makes this both easier and more painful." The phone conversation went on for several more minutes, during which Charles learned details that shattered everything he thought he knew about his life. Camilla had been planning something for months, involving legal documents and financial arrangements that Charles had unknowingly been part of. She spoke about properties he didn't even know they owned together, and about decisions being made in his name without his knowledge. When Camilla finally ended the call, she sat in silence for a moment, staring at a photograph on the small table beside her chair. Charles could see that it was a picture of her with a man he did not recognize, both of them smiling in a way that suggested deep affection and shared secrets. Charles wanted to confront her immediately, to demand answers and explanations for what he had just heard. But something held him back. A need to understand the full scope of what was happening before he revealed that he knew anything. He quietly backed up the stairs, his heart pounding so loudly he was sure Camilla would hear it. Back in the main part of the house, Charles sat in his study, staring at the walls lined with books and family photographs. Everything looked the same as it always had, but nothing felt real anymore. The woman he had trusted with his deepest feelings, his future plans, and his complete vulnerability had been living a double life right under his roof. He thought about all the recent months, trying to remember signs he might have missed. There had been times when Camilla seemed distracted during their conversations, moments when she would quickly end phone calls when he entered a room, and occasions when she claimed to be visiting friends but returned home with details that did not quite add up. Charles realized that while he had been building what he thought was a genuine partnership with Camilla, she had been constructing an elaborate deception that involved not just emotional betrayal, but apparently financial and legal manipulation as well. The documents she had asked him to sign, claiming they were routine paperwork for their shared properties and investments, now took on a sinister meaning. As evening approached, Charles heard Camilla moving around upstairs, preparing for dinner as if nothing had changed. Soon she would come down and greet him with the same warm smile and affectionate manner she always showed, not knowing that he had discovered her secret world hidden beneath their own home. Charles stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gardens they had planned together, the paths they had walked hand in hand, the future they had discussed building as a team. Everything felt like a lie now, and he did not know how he would be able to sit across from Camilla at dinner, pretending that his entire world had not just collapsed around him. The sound of Camilla's footsteps on the stairs grew closer, and Charles knew that the hardest performance of his life was about to begin. That evening, Charles barely managed to get through dinner with Camilla. Every smile she gave him felt like another layer of deception, every casual comment about her day another carefully constructed lie. She spoke about visiting her sister and having lunch with old friends, stories that Charles now questioned completely. When she reached across the table to touch his hand affectionately, he had to fight every instinct not to pull away. "You seem quiet tonight, darling," Camilla said, her voice filled with what sounded like genuine concern. "Is everything all right? Did something happen during your meetings in Scotland?" Charles looked into her eyes, searching for any sign of guilt or nervousness, but found only the same warmth and attention she had always shown him. This somehow made everything worse, realizing how skilled she had become at hiding her true thoughts and feelings from him. "Just tired," Charles managed to say, forcing a smile. The trip was longer than expected. After dinner, Camilla excused herself to take a bath and prepare for bed early, claiming she had a headache. This gave Charles the opportunity he needed to return to the hidden chamber and investigate further. His hands were still shaking as he made his way back to the secret panel, but this time he was determined to understand the full extent of what Camilla had been hiding from him. The chamber looked different in the evening light, more intimate and personal. Charles began to examine everything more carefully, starting with the photographs displayed around the room. There were dozens of pictures, many featuring Camilla with the same man he had seen in the first photograph, spanning what appeared to be several years. The man looked to be roughly Camilla's age, well-dressed and distinguished, and in every picture they appeared comfortable and happy together. Behind the photographs, Charles found a small calendar with dates marked in Camilla's handwriting. Many of the marked dates coincided with times when Camilla had told him she was attending charity events or visiting friends. The pattern was clear and devastating. She had been maintaining a relationship with this other man for months, possibly years, while living with Charles and planning their shared future. On the writing desk, Charles discovered a collection of journals and notebooks that chronicled what appeared to be Camilla's true feelings and plans. His hands trembled as he opened the first journal, dated nearly 2 years earlier, and began to read entries that destroyed any remaining hope that this might be a misunderstanding. "Charles proposed today," read one entry. "I said yes, of course, because the financial security and social position are exactly what I need to take care of Marcus and ensure our future together. Charles is so trusting, so eager to believe that I have fallen in love with him the way he has with me. It feels cruel sometimes, but Marcus and I have waited so long to be together properly, and this arrangement will give us everything we need." Charles had to sit down as he read entry after entry detailing how Camilla viewed their relationship as a business transaction rather than a genuine partnership. She wrote about manipulating his emotions, about encouraging his dependence on her, and about gradually gaining access to his financial and legal affairs. Marcus, he learned from reading further, was apparently Camilla's true love from many years earlier, someone she had never stopped caring for despite other relationships and marriages. The journals revealed that they had maintained contact throughout Camilla's marriage to Charles, planning for a future when they could finally be together openly and comfortably. The most painful entries described how Camilla viewed Charles himself. She wrote about his loneliness after Diana's death, how easy it had been to position herself as his source of comfort and stability. She detailed conversations where she had deliberately agreed with his opinions and interests, not because she shared them, but because it made him feel understood and appreciated. "Charles talks about our future together constantly," read another entry. "He has such grand plans for our retirement years, for the charitable work we will do as a team." I nod, and smile, and add little suggestions that make him think I share his vision. Really, I am just calculating how long I need to maintain this performance before Marcus and I can disappear together, with enough money to live exactly as we choose. Charles found financial documents hidden in a folder at the back of the desk drawer. These papers revealed the true scope of Camilla's planning. Over the months of their marriage, she had gradually convinced Charles to restructure his investments and properties in ways that would allow her to claim significant portions of his wealth in case of divorce or separation. The documents showed that Camilla had been working with lawyers and financial advisors without Charles's knowledge, setting up accounts and legal structures that would protect her interests while leaving Charles vulnerable. Some of the papers he had signed, thinking they were routine administrative matters, had actually transferred ownership of several properties and investments into joint accounts that Camilla could access independently. As Charles read through bank statements and legal agreements, he realized that Camilla had been gradually moving money from his accounts into investments that she controlled. The amounts were not large enough to be immediately noticeable, but over time they added up to a significant portion of his wealth. The final folder contained what appeared to be Camilla's exit strategy. There were travel documents, property rental agreements in foreign countries, and detailed financial projections showing how she and Marcus could live comfortably for decades on the money they had accumulated. The plan was elaborate and thorough, covering everything from new identities to backup financial accounts in multiple countries. Charles sat in the hidden chamber, surrounded by the evidence of the most comprehensive betrayal he had ever experienced, and felt something breaking inside his chest. This was not simply about romantic unfaithfulness or emotional lies. Camilla had constructed an entire false life, using his love and trust as tools to steal not just his money but years of his emotional investment and hope for the future. He thought about all the moments when he had felt grateful for Camilla's presence in his life, all the times he had told friends and family how lucky he felt to have found love again after the pain of his divorce from Diana. Every one of those moments now felt like evidence of how completely he had been fooled. The worst part was remembering how he had defended Camilla to people who had expressed doubts about their relationship. There had been friends who questioned her motives, family members who suggested he was moving too quickly, and advisors who recommended more careful financial planning. Charles had dismissed all of their concerns, believing that their love was genuine and that Camilla's commitment to him was real. Now he understood that while he had been falling deeper in love and building dreams of their life together, Camilla had been systematically dismantling his financial security and preparing to abandon him completely. The woman he had trusted with his most vulnerable emotions had been calculating and manipulating every interaction they shared. Charles looked around the secret chamber one more time, taking in every detail of the space where Camilla had planned his emotional and financial destruction. Tomorrow, he would have to decide how to confront her about what he had discovered, knowing that their entire relationship had been based on lies from the very beginning. Charles spent the entire night in his study, unable to sleep or even lie down. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw images from Camilla's journal entries, remembered her false smiles and calculated affection. By dawn, he had made his decision about how to handle the confrontation that could no longer be avoided. When Camilla came downstairs for breakfast, she found Charles sitting at the dining room table with several file folders arranged in front of him. His face was pale and exhausted, but his expression was calm and determined in a way that immediately caught her attention. "Good morning, darling," Camilla said, moving toward him with her usual morning kiss. "You are up early. Did you sleep well?" Charles looked up at her, studying her face carefully. Even now, knowing everything he knew, he could see no trace of guilt or nervousness in her expression. Her ability to maintain this performance was almost impressive, if it were not so devastating. "Please sit down, Camilla," Charles said quietly. "We need to have a conversation." Something in his tone made Camilla pause. She sat down across from him, her eyes moving to the folders on the table. "Is everything all right? You look like you have not slept at all." Charles opened the first folder and removed several photographs, placing them on the table where Camilla could see them clearly. They were the pictures he had found in her secret chamber, showing her with Marcus in various intimate settings over the past several years. Camilla's face went completely white as she stared at the photographs. For the first time since Charles had known her, she appeared genuinely surprised and unable to speak. "I found your chamber yesterday," Charles said, his voice steady despite the pain he felt. "I heard your phone conversation with Marcus. I read your journals. I found all the financial documents And your escape plans. Camilla sat in complete silence for nearly a minute, staring at the photographs as if she could make them disappear through concentration. When she finally looked up at Charles, her expression had changed completely. The warmth and affection were gone, replaced by something cold and calculating that Charles had never seen before. "How long have you known?" she asked, her voice flat and emotionless. "Since yesterday afternoon. I came home early from Scotland and heard you talking to Marcus about your plans." Camilla leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. The loving woman Charles thought he had married was completely gone, replaced by someone who looked at him with what could only be described as mild annoyance at being caught. "What do you want?" she asked. "Money to keep quiet? Some kind of arrangement where we both pretend this conversation never happened?" Charles felt a new wave of shock at her casual attitude. Even now, faced with complete exposure, Camilla showed no remorse or embarrassment about what she had done. If anything, she seemed irritated that her plans had been discovered before she could complete them. "I want to understand why," Charles said. "Why did you marry me if you loved someone else? Why did you spend months making me believe that you cared about me when you were planning to steal from me and disappear?" Camilla shrugged, a gesture that felt like another knife in Charles's chest. "Because you were lonely and vulnerable and I needed financial security. Marcus and I have been in love for years, but he lost most of his money in bad investments. Marrying you was the fastest way to solve both of our problems." The casual cruelty of her response left Charles speechless for a moment. This woman had shared his bed, his meals, his hopes for the future, and she spoke about manipulating his emotions as if it were a simple business transaction. "Did you ever feel anything real for me?" Charles asked, hating himself for needing to know the answer. "You were kind," Camilla said with another shrug, "easy to manage. You wanted so badly to believe that someone could love you that you never questioned anything I said or did. It would have worked perfectly if you had not come home early yesterday." Charles opened the second folder and removed the financial documents he had found in her chamber. "You have been stealing from me for months, moving money, changing ownership of properties, setting up accounts I knew nothing about. I was securing my future," Camilla said without any apparent shame. "You have more money than you could spend in several lifetimes. Marcus and I just needed enough to live comfortably. You would never have even noticed the amounts we took." Charles realized that Camilla felt no guilt about her actions, because she genuinely did not believe she had done anything wrong. In her mind, his wealth and emotional needs were simply resources to be used for her benefit. "What happens now?" Charles asked. "Now you decide whether you want this to become public," Camilla said, leaning forward slightly. "You can let me leave quietly with what I have already secured, and we can both move on with our lives. Or you can try to fight me legally, which will mean months of court proceedings and public humiliation for both of us." Charles looked at this woman who had shared his home and his bed, who had listened to his deepest fears and greatest hopes, who had made him believe that love was possible for him again after the pain of his divorce from Diana. The woman sitting across from him now was a complete stranger, someone who had used his loneliness as a weapon against him. "I want you to leave today," Charles said finally. "Take whatever personal belongings are truly yours, and go to Marcus or wherever you plan to go. I will have my lawyers deal with the financial matters." Camilla nodded as if this were exactly the outcome she had expected. "The money I moved is in accounts that you cannot access. You can try to recover it through legal action, but that will take years and cost you more in legal fees than you would recover." She stood up from the table, smoothing her dress as if she were simply finishing a business meeting. "I will be packed and gone by this afternoon. You should probably change the locks after I leave, and have your lawyers review any documents you signed in the past year." As Camilla walked toward the door, she paused and looked back at Charles. "For what it is worth, you are a good man. You deserved better than what I gave you, but Marcus and I have waited long enough to be together, and I was not willing to wait any longer." With that, she left the room, and Charles heard her footsteps on the stairs as she went to pack her belongings. He sat alone at the dining room table, surrounded by the evidence of the most comprehensive betrayal he had ever experienced. Over the following hours, Charles watched from his study window as Camilla loaded several suitcases into her car. She moved efficiently, taking only what belonged to her, and showing no emotion about leaving the home and life they had supposedly built together. Just before she drove away, Camilla knocked on the study door and entered one last time. "The chamber downstairs can be sealed up again," she said. "Or you can use it for whatever you like. The electrical work is well done." Charles did not respond, and after a moment, Camilla left without saying goodbye. As her car disappeared down the driveway, Charles felt an unexpected sense of relief mixed with his pain and anger. The woman who had been lying to him every day for months was finally gone, and he would no longer have to pretend that their relationship was real. In the days that followed, Charles had the secret chamber sealed permanently and began working with his lawyers to understand the full extent of the financial damage Camilla had caused. As she had predicted, recovering the stolen money would be difficult and expensive, but Charles found that he cared less about the money than about reclaiming his sense of reality and self-respect. He also began to understand that while Camilla's betrayal was devastating, it had also taught him important lessons about trust, vulnerability, and the difference between genuine love and skilled manipulation. The experience had broken something inside him, but it had also shown him that he could survive betrayal and rebuild his life on more solid foundations. Months later, Charles would still sometimes think about the hidden chamber and the woman who had used it to plan his destruction. But he would also remember that he had found the strength to confront the truth and choose his own dignity over comfortable lies. That knowledge, painful as it was, gave him a foundation for whatever came next in his life.